One of the biggest problems that I hear game developers have is time. They don't have enough time to finish their games, even start working on their games. Or maybe they come to me and they ask for my opinion on something, and then I ask them for their documentation and they're like, oh well, I was planning on really starting only on that in like 2 months. And I feel this is a very common sentiment. Okay, I'm making games in my spare time. I have another job, because if you're watching this game, probably statistically you haven't really released any big successes yet. So time usually is your biggest limiting factor. This isn't just a video purely about how to make more time, but I actually want to talk more about a concept that I thought about recently, which is the concept of velocity, and how velocity is probably one of the most important aspects that is not technical in actually making your game. Having a good amount of velocity, so basically how much work you can put into your game in a certain time, like day over day, you can work on your game every day, is probably one of the biggest influences to actually finishing your game and making it successful and outperforming your competition. Because that's also something that I've noticed, and also kind of why I thought about this idea is we, if I'm being honest, have no talent, or at least we're not really talented game developers. We didn't go to school for game development. As you can see in Forge industry, we have no artistic talents really, and still we've released more games than most of the other Belgian game developers, at least, who went to one of the best games development schools in the world, who have actual talent, and who are still somehow, there's some studios, they started at the same period in time as us. They still don't have a Steam page for their first game. They are still scraping by and trying to find funding for their 5-year development cycle that they're planning on, because they lack velocity. So I want to talk a bit more about that and how you can completely outperform and outcompete basically 90% of the other game developers, even the ones just watching this channel, just by getting more velocity. Generally, there are 4 different approaches you can do to getting more things done in just your development cycle. The first one is you can work more efficiently. So basically, in the same amount of hours, you get more stuff done. Second, you can just work more. So instead of 40 hours, you work 60 hours. And now, well, you're going to be also delivering more work. Thirdly, you can just outsource certain tasks, such as art, things that you would normally spend time on, you can let someone else do them. And then the fourth one is you can just drop certain things. So that means that you're not gonna bother with them for your game at all. I suggest that you work on all 4 of them really to see how you can optimize them. I'm gonna dive into them now, starting with how do you work more efficiently? Sounds pretty wishy-washy. How do you actually do this? Well, there's this concept that I've also been trying to apply recently, which is Parkinson's law, which basically states that a task will always fill up the allotted time you give it. So I could be like, hey, I'm gonna make 2D UI elements for our next game, Songs of Everjade, which you can wishlist, and I'm gonna give myself 2 weeks for that. Or I can say the same thing, I'm gonna make the UI elements, but I'm only gonna give myself 2 days for that. I'll be able to spend 2 weeks on it or 2 days, and in the end result between 2 weeks and 2 days isn't really going to be that much better. Sure, it'll be a bit better, but it's not worth spending 7 times as much on a certain task. This is another very common thing I see with you guys who are often programmers is, I make my first game and it has to be code-wise perfect. I'm gonna use all of the software principles, I'm gonna refactor it 7 times. That's great, and I understand why you want to do that, because you want to write clean code, but often that rewritten piece of code isn't saving you any time really. Maybe it's increasing your performance by 10%, but you should really wonder, is this going to be worth it to have 2 extra weeks of development time, not really make any new progress on mechanics and things like that? Or do I just say, whatever, this is quick and dirty and it works, let's move on to something else? Also, don't waste too much time on just making decisions about things that don't matter. So many people of you are always wondering, what engine should I use? I get emails from people that are like, hey, I've been wondering for the past 2 months if I should go for Unreal, Unity or Godot. And I just cringe a little bit when I get those emails, because in that 2-month period, you could have just picked an engine, made a fully game basically almost, and then realized, okay, this wasn't the engine for me, went for another engine and repeated the process. Or you just already found your engine and you have a 2-month head start on other people who are still looking, what engine should I use? Oh, but I'm scared of Unity, I'm scared of Godot, it doesn't have the features I want. Just take something and you'll learn it along the way. And worst case, you'll learn that the engine isn't for you. But there's so much more value in actually touching the engine, interacting with it, instead of just being watching our engine tier list and other engine comparisons videos. Oh, I should go for this engine or should I just make my own one? That just wastes too much time. And honestly, your game isn't going to be so much better if you make it in Godot versus if you make it in Unity. This is also where I want to take a quick moment to talk about our sponsor, which is me. We've got a Patreon. If you feel like you're wasting too much time or there's too many things you're not certain of, you've been watching all of our videos and there's still like some question you have, look into our Patreon tiers. There's a Patreon tier, the Game Dev Pro, where I will sit down with you and we'll go over whatever you have. You have your scope already maybe, or you're not certain about what specific game you should go for, what game idea. Or you just want to like talk more about, is this even a good idea? How should my timelines be? Are these realistic? I will sit down with you, we'll have a meeting and we'll like month by month, we'll look into, okay, how is your progress? How should we pivot? What are you doing? And this way you can save months of time. And I have done this before with other developers coming to me because it can be very overwhelming. We'll get into that in a second as well. And just having someone who isn't like that far ahead of you, but who has gone through those motions, who has published the game before, can save you so much time and in return also give you a lot of velocity for, in the end, a pretty low investment. The next way you can like get more velocity is working more hours. This one I'm gonna keep quite short because honestly, this is less realistic. You can do this for certain periods in time, but honestly, we all have the same 24 hours. You have the same 24 hours that I do, and at least 8 of them you should be sleeping. If you're not sleeping 8 hours, you should sleep more. It's very important because if you're not well rested, well, you're not gonna be making good games. Then probably you've also got work to do, so there's not that much time left anymore. Sure, you can like maybe squeeze in a few hours here and there, but at some point it's also going to be unsustainable. So generally try to stay away from working more hours. It's something that can work very well like in a very short period of time for like a week or 2 weeks, but keeping it sustained for like long periods to go to like 80-hour work weeks is just going to get you burned out and you're gonna want to quit game development altogether, which we don't want here. If you want to see where can I put more hours, I always say weekends are your superpower. Just put some time in the weekends. Sure, there's other things you can do, but if you really want to, you can squeeze some time out in the weekends. Now, the third way you can increase your velocity is by not dealing with tasks that don't matter. This is another thing that I see so many studios like spend time on that is not worth it at all. Some common things are, oh, I need a good logo for my studio, or I'll need a good website, or I'll need a business plan. All of these things I feel are stupid. Our Bite Me Games logo was made in like 1 hour at most. Our website was made in 4 hours and it's garbage. You can go to our website, but we don't care, honestly. It's not important. Our games are more important than our website. Same with like a business plan. Yeah, you have this, the business canvas. We don't have a business plan like all written out and thought about because action and velocity will trump any like thinking. It's the same with your game idea. Having a business plan doesn't matter if you're not executing upon it. And it's much better to just execute. In the end, you're a game developer. You're just gonna make games. That's your business plan, most likely. Don't overcomplicate it. You're not dealing with supply chains and logistics and like venture capital and things. It's just gonna be wasting your time and you could spend that time on being more efficient. And then lastly, you can outsource. Now, this is something that we have this scarcity mindset as game developers, and we've personally struggled so much with this as well. It's okay, I'm a game developer. The only asset I have is time. I can just put my own time in anything, but I'm not gonna outsource anything. So what you get often then is solo developers who are really strong at programming, who are suddenly like, oh, I'm gonna learn Blender because obviously I can't afford an artist, I'll just learn it myself. And then they lose like 4 to 6 months of development time because they are starting from scratch with Blender. They have no innate ability usually, and even then the work they deliver after 6 months is very mediocre at best. That's what we did with Forge Industry. If we would have leaned more even just on asset packs, because those exist, guys, and if you time it with a sale, you can get really solid, really big asset packs for like $100 to $200 that are enough to sustain your entire game. And players do not care. Game developers, of course, they'll be like, oh, this uses Cinti assets, but gamers, they don't see that. They don't like go behind the curtain to see, oh, these are Cinti assets. They just see, oh, this is a fun game and it looks pretty decent. If you really want, you can also put on like an extra shader, but you've already gotten like all the building blocks for like your 3D models then. So you should just focus on what you're good at. If you're a good artist but a bad programmer, don't go with Unity. There's plenty of other engines. Go maybe for something like more visual novel based like RenPy, or go for Game Maker Studio or Construct 3. I know we dogged on them a bit in our tier list video, but they're really good if you're limited in your technical skills, and they can make some really solid games. Games like Undertale, games like Hotline Miami are all made in these simple engines and are just focusing more on the art. So don't waste your time on learning things you maybe don't even like and you're not good at just because, oh, it's gonna save me $200 over a 4-month period. Your time is worth way more than that. And getting those games out sooner will also get you more funding probably, because you'll have like some income from previous games to actually keep investing more and more into maybe at some point getting a dedicated artist or a dedicated programmer. And then one last thing, speed is key, but know that there's a limit to it, okay? So when I say work more, or when I say work more efficiently, get more velocity, this isn't sustainable usually for like years on end. What I usually suggest is just take those 4 things that I just mentioned. Working more efficiently, maybe a bit of extra hours, and dropping the things that you're not good at or outsourcing them. And for 2 weeks, try to be like really vigilant of like, what am I spending my time on? Am I only doing the things that I'm really good at, that I'm skilled at already, that I have a background in? And give it 2 weeks your all. Then maybe you can extend it to 4 weeks, but afterwards just take a step back and look, okay, what have I achieved here? What were the things I generally spent most of my time on? What are the things that I maybe wasn't as efficient in? And see, what can you change? Maybe you found out that, hey, working 4 extra hours a week is not gonna happen. I just like can't sleep anymore, or the moment that I hit the bed, I'm like exhausted and it's like not a good sleep because you're just so tired. It's all like an experiment in the end. That's what game development is. It's not about making the banger game as your first game. It's about making multiple games to build up that portfolio and to be able to, 5 years from now, make that banger game. And you have the experience and you have the knowledge to make it good. We're also going to be practicing this a bit. You may notice this video is uploaded on a Sunday because we realized this as well with the velocity aspect. We're pretty good at making these videos by now. I can make them relatively quickly and I have some more time. So why don't I make 3 videos a week, which is what we're doing now. There's going to be 3 videos a week for about a month at least, and then I'll like reconsider just giving you more content. Also, we're going to be uploading more videos at least once a week to our Patreon, like the longer, where I go more in depth even. And we're just gonna see how is it gonna go. Is this going to is this going to move the needle, or is this, just a waste of time? At least we'll have tried it. At least we've gone even higher in velocity. And probably if you have high velocity, things are going to come to you faster. You're just doing more. And if you do more, there's just a higher chance you're getting lucky as well, because luck is also just dependent on how many things you send out there. Anyways, we're game developers, we're making our own games, we're also making videos about like the things we learn in running our studio. So if that's something that interests you, be sure to head down below and subscribe. It really helps us out in seeing, okay, there are people interested in what we're saying. And in exchange, you get 3 videos every week like this, filled with value of how do I run my studio, what are some things we learned, things like that. That's all I really had to say. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!